regional, and local teams involved in planning and executing marketing activities. For today's training, we will be using various Microsoft Teams um, tools to keep things interactive. So please, first, use the meeting chat to share your comments, questions, and thoughts as we go through the training. It's really a great way to stay engaged. Second, please feel free to use the reaction icons to let us know what you're thinking during the session. And thirdly, we'll use Team Pulse for knowledge checks pre and post training. And lastly, this session will be recorded and a replay will be available on the Marketing Academy Hub, which I will share in a moment. So if you miss anything or you want to revisit the material, you'll have access to it later. So let's make this a productive and interactive session. This module emphasizes the first capability, which is customer insights and analysis, mapping to our marketing excellence principles. All seven capabilities ensure our marketeers are strategically aligned with Pfizer goals, equipped with both technical and soft skills, and ready to adapt to the evolving marketing landscape. As a marketing academy, we're deeply invested in your growth and development. Understanding customer insight is critical because it allows us to tailor our strategies to meet the needs and preference of our patients. By putting ourselves in their shoes, we can better understand their experiences, their challenges, and expectations, ultimately leading to more effective and empathetic marketing efforts. So, which are our learning objectives for today's session? Generating customer insights, again, as I said, is essential for impactful and effective marketing. You learned today the fundamentals of customer insights, how to generate, identify, and apply them to enhance marketing strategies and business outcomes. Upon completion of this module, also, you will be able to distinguish between facts, observations, and true insights, understand how insights inform key marketing decisions, and describe Pfizer's approach to generating insights and writing compelling insight statements. So, what are we covering today? Which is our agenda? We will cover these four following topics. What is a customer insight? How to generate insights and unlock their true value. Pfizer's approach to deriving insights and writing insight statements, and a summary of today's session. So, before we dive into today's sessions, I like to start with a quick poll. If you can just launch the poll, Joey, to gauge where everyone stands. So you have two questions. As you can see, a pop just appear on your screen. So please take a moment to answer each of the two questions. As you can see, there's an arrow, so you can move to the next questions. We will leave it open. And so please respond, and we will continue with the session. So let's dive into today's session. I'm excited to introduce our discussion leaders today, Juliana Abbott in market research, and Sonali Jasmine, which is part of the marketing excellence team. So thank you so much, both Juliana and Sonali, for taking your time, all your knowledge. And over to you, Sonali. Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Caro, and good morning, good afternoon, hopefully not good evening for many people. So excited to be here with you all. So nice to see a lot of familiar faces and also a lot of new faces here. So we are always excited to talk about customer insights, and I am so delighted to have Juliana, who's my partner here. I always say my partner in crime as a marketer in global marketing and in country marketing. Like, we have partnered together a lot on developing insights, generating insights, and we feel very strongly about this and very passionately about this topic. And so we're so excited to be here with you. So you'll hear from both of us through the course of this session. We will keep it fairly conversational. We'll be sharing with you our approaches, our takeaways, our insights, and please put your questions in chat. We will try to get to those as much as possible during chat. And then for those that we're not able to get to towards the end of the session, we will follow up with. So a lot of really exciting content to get through. But before we dive in, what we wanted to do was start with a few iconic brands, and some of these brands may be more familiar to you than others. There's Febreze, which is an odor eliminating spray that is used quite frequently here in the US and some countries around the world. Snickers, everyone remembers the candy bar all over the world. I remember I had very fond memories growing up in India with Snickers. Clear Blue, a pregnancy test for those of you who have not been through that. It is a really strong brand with moms, and then Botox. That is one option that's a little bit closer. So, what is in common with a lot of these brands? And I think what's really obvious here is that they are highly successful. They have been well known. They exist in very crowded categories. But maybe what's less obvious is, and the reason why we selected these in particular was that they were all built around powerful human insights that really went beyond product attributes that they offer their customers. So these brands have been around for years. During some of those years, they actually lost their competitive advantage and they realized what they had offered as a standalone product was not enough to differentiate them from their competitors. And so we all go through these situations as marketers, regardless of where we're sitting on the globe, regardless of what products we're on, that we really need to deepen our understanding of what's truly relevant and important to customers. And this is really what they did to drive behavior change. And in a lot of cases, this involved going back to the drawing board to identify customer insights that would really unlock that brand growth. As a result of this, these brands were able to make a comeback and really leverage customer insights to build their strategies and shape their initiatives. So the reason why we selected these and we talk about these is, our key takeaway from looking at these brands and many others that you've been exposed to is that really strong brands are based on really strong customer insights. And that's really what separates some good brands from some great brands. So, double clicking on some of these with Febreze, which is an odor eliminating spray, and we'll take you through a little bit more detail as we go through the session on and unpack what Febreze did and how they generated those insights and how they applied those insights. But for them, being an odor eliminator was not enough in itself. And the insight there was that, I don't feel that my home is clean until it smells clean, was really that insight that they got through. Um, from a Snickers perspective, being a tasty peanut and nougat bar didn't make the brand stand out from competition. They actually uncovered this insight that I'm not myself when I'm hungry, and when I'm not myself, it impacts my ability to be part of my friends, be part of my work group. So leveraging this really helped Mars Inc. Put that brand on a growth trajectory again. ClearBlue is a pregnancy test that has a digital readout there, which gives it, they had the 99% accuracy, but this didn't really differentiate itself from a crowded marketplace. So the insight that they really leveraged was not knowing if I'm pregnant or not is torture, and nothing else in the world matters until I know. So that certainty and that clarity in being able to see right away whether you were or not pregnant was that aha moment that they really harnessed and put them on that growth trajectory. And then similarly, Botox, as you guys know, goes beyond just immobilizing facial muscles and is more than an alternative to surgery. When they really unpacked the insight with customers, it was just really about wanting to feel like me, but with fewer lines. So this really set them on a new trajectory with new messaging, with a platform that was really instrumental to driving that renewed brand growth. So what we've learned from these is deep insights really matter for our customers. Getting to those relevant deep insights are really critical in helping drive that patient impact and drive that brand impact. So let's talk a little bit about why customer insights matter, and starting with our patients, because we are, as a company, driving breakthroughs that change patients' lives. And I always tap into Juliana, who is our patient representative and the voice of our customer, to share with us a little bit of how insights matter and why they matter for patients.
Thank you, Sonali. So as the slide says, a deeper understanding of why patients think, feel, and do what they do in the journey really can help us improve the impact to them. It's very easy for us to sit here working on our brands. We know them inside and out. We know what we want patients to do, what we want patients to think, what they should be doing. And it's easy to think that that's actually how they do think, and that they know what they should be doing, and that they, are thinking rationally about it. So if we don't understand from their shoes, from their perspective, how they're approaching things, we can't actually solve their problem, right? Because we might be solving for completely the wrong thing, or we might have the right unmet need in our heads, but how they're thinking about it and how we're thinking about it might be completely different, right? And they may not even be able to express that, but we need to get to the point where we understand it deeply in order to connect with them. Because ideally then, right, what you do is you put your communications together and you tap into those things that are just going to click with them. And to me, one of the best parts about finding those insights and really being able to express them to the team is that it doesn't just help you make one decision in the moment. The more you understand patients, the more you can make decisions going forward, because you understand them in your gut, right? You understand how they would think about things and how they would make decisions. However, that process of gaining patient insights is ongoing. It's not just solve the insight once and you're good, right? It's a constant process of discovery and exploration. And I would also say, it's not on the slide here, but understanding physicians as people is also so critical. We can talk about some of those insights later about the aha moments with physicians, but also if you understand physicians and how they're approaching things, you're going to understand better what that interaction is between the doctor and patient, so you can make it more productive for the patient in the long run.
That's great. And this is also so relevant to why customer insights matter to our brand, because brands we know that are built on true customer insights can really drive behavioral change, and result in those business outcomes that are enduring, that are strong and that really stick, right? So how do we drive greater relevance for our brands, pivoting from what is it that our product, offers, to which problem does the customer really need solved? It helps differentiate us in, most of us are competing in very crowded categories. So understanding what the customer truly wants and resolving it in a way that is very distinct from the way our competitors are doing so can really help differentiate. And ultimately, um, marketing is about building that connection and that loyalty. So giving our customers a reason to stay with our brand year after year is something really critical. And understanding what those sticky points are really critical in building that brand growth and that greater connection and loyalty to the brand. And then ultimately, they matter to us as marketers, right? Because the capability to generate these powerful insights are really an essential skill for all of us as high performing marketers. Insight generation is really at the heart of a lot of the activities we do as marketing professionals. It is something that we need to demonstrate and master every single day. The way we think about our customers, the way we think about how our brands connect to our customers, really is what will separate us from other marketers. And then hopefully not just at Pfizer and our roles that we have, but we've taken that discipline and take it wherever we go as we progress as marketers. So this is really important, not just from a patient perspective and from a brand perspective, but also from a broader marketing career perspective for each of us. So we talk a lot about insights and we throw the word around a lot, really across the organization. And there's a lot of different types of insights. So I wanted us with Juliana to sort of help unpack some of these different types of insights and sort of what we're focusing on here today.
Thank you, Sonali. So as this graphic shows, there are a lot of there are insights everywhere. There are insights about the market, right, that you can get into when you figure out how many people are diagnosed and how many people are treating and why is that happening. Environmental, right? What's going on in the world with respect to policy? or people's access to products. And that yields a lot of observations and information. Cultural, right? Is your disease area seen as a stigmatized disease area, or as an area that people maybe don't believe, or they have certain feelings about that are very deeply entrenched? And then obviously how your competition is behaving and what insights they might be tapping into. And all those are fantastic. And they all feed into what we're going to talk about today, which is customer insights, those insights that go deep into our different patient types and the physicians and anyone else who engages, who that we need to connect with in order to help make the decisions that are best for patients. So.
Great. And I think, one critical piece here that we've spent a lot of time on, Juliana, is how do we actually define a customer insight, right? And there's so many different definitions all over the world, like different theories around insights. And so when we talk about customer insights and the way that we define them at Pfizer, it really boils down to this sentence, which is a breakthrough understanding of the underlying motivations driving a customer's behavior that can be addressed to create customer value and competitive advantage. So let's unpack this a little bit because there's a lot in the statement. When we talk about a breakthrough understanding, it is really about a recognition that no one else has about what our customers really want. So this breakthrough is something that's surprising. It's unexpected. It's never been articulated before. It's one of those things, I think, Juliana, you had mentioned this, where like you look at this and you say, wow, I have like this, like it was there all along, but I never quite thought about it that way. So that's really what we mean by this breakthrough understanding. It feels very intuitive and very immediate, but it's something that you haven't necessarily seen before. When we think about the underlying motivation, this is where we're digging down deeper into the real reasons behind the behaviors and where we're getting into places that are a little bit more emotional and not always rational. It might also be reasons that our customers are uncomfortable actually revealing. They may not want to say these things or reveal the fact that they experience these things. The third piece is that they can be addressed. So there are a lot of different types of insights that we can have about our customers, but does this really have the potential to change behavior with the right level of focus and investment? Is this insight actually actionable to us? Is an important consideration. And then finally, the competitive advantage is really when a need or problem can be addressed by our brand in a unique way. So it ties to the element of actionability, but it is really about solving this customer problem in a unique way and a recognition that perhaps no one has had about our customer set. So these are the key components of how we define customer insights specifically at Pfizer. And we'll talk a little bit about what the characteristics of these insights are and why customer insights can be so elusive because they seem so simple, but they're actually very difficult to generate. And so, Juliana, would love to hear from you about what would you consider as some of these characteristics of customer insights and how we get to them?
Absolutely. So one of the things, as Sonali was mentioning about insights, is they're rarely verbally or expressed explicitly by customers. And that's sometimes because customers feel uncomfortable talking about things, but a lot of times it's because they don't even realize the drivers of their own behavior. They can't articulate it, it's subconscious. And so if you ask people a question, they'll answer you, but it may not really be the right answer because they can't articulate the right answer. And then they have to be very relevant or specific to whatever that unmet need or issue is. So there are a lot of really interesting insights, but if they're not on point to the problem we feel like we need to solve or we're understanding we need to solve, then it's going to be useless to the customer. And then, as we were saying, it has to be able to drive decisions, right? We have to be able to do something about it in order to leverage that advantage. I can give some examples of some of those sort of rarely expressed insight moments. So, for example, I worked on Viagra for years, and we found a lot of insights around the journey with that. And one of them was that we were realizing it takes almost 3 years to get to the doctor when men have problems. There are a lot of insights that we discovered why it takes so long. But what we also discovered is we saw in the data that once they got to the doctor and got a prescription for Viagra, 50% of them never got another prescription. So we were like, you took 3 years to get here. You went through a lot. We would think that once you got to the doctor, mission accomplished. Like you get your Viagra and you go on happily with your life. Why would half of them not come back? And what we discovered through qual research was that men were not expecting to go to the doctor and have the doctor tell them, well, you have this chronic degenerative condition. It's going to keep getting worse and you're going to have to take a pill for the rest of your life anytime you want to have sex. What they were expecting to hear was, I finally got the courage to come in and you're just going to tell me that I need to eat more vegetables and drink less alcohol and I'll be fine. So they did not get the answer they were expecting and they were completely thrown by it. And so, becoming a person who takes a pill forever to have sex is not what was on their agenda. And they never would have been able to articulate that, right? But it makes perfect sense once you think it through. From the physician side, I worked on Chantix for smoking cessation. And remember that physicians are people too, right? We expect that they behave so logically, right? And so we knew in the data, physicians would say, Chantix is the number one thing to help people quit smoking. It works better than anything else. And yet they wouldn't prescribe it. And what we found was they knew it was the best, and so they would hold back on prescribing it until the patients proved themselves that they were really interested in quitting smoking. So they wanted to see patients try this, so that they would prove they were worthy of Chantix, because otherwise, here's what's going to happen. The doctor's going to say, I have my best thing for you, and I'm going to give it to you, and I know it's going to work. And then the patient, who's not totally committed, walks out, doesn't commit to it, doesn't use it right, fails, comes back to the doctor. Now the doctor has nothing. They've already used their best thing, right? So what can the doctor do now for you? They failed you. So the doctor's going to make very sure that you're committed before they give their thing. Is that a logical behavior? Not really, but it completely makes sense from a human perspective. Once you know that, you can figure out how to talk to doctors. You can figure out how to talk to patients. You show that patients have to demonstrate commitment. You talk to doctors about what are those things that patients can do to demonstrate commitment? What are those things that make you comfortable bringing this thing forward? So those are some examples of things that I think were not really verbalized, very deep, and yet very relevant, very specific. You can see how they'd be highly actionable to move them forward. And they were all based on facts and observations and then deep research. So insights definitely go beyond facts and data points, right? And beyond observations. I would say sometimes to me, like people are like, oh, data is amazing. We've got all these, things that can generate reams and reams of big data. And that is all great. And you can see patterns in that data all day long. To me, those are patterns, they're observations, they're not insights, right? You need to delve deeper into what are those patterns telling you, or what is this pattern plus this interesting thing from research telling me that gets me to that, oh, now I see something that I had never seen before. So just remembering that falling in love with data is great, but what data spits out is not all the way to an insight. So there's a great example with Febreze on how their core insight that Sonali mentioned at the beginning, a house isn't clean until it smells clean, was actually derived from all these things. So if you look at purchase data, what you can see is natural smelling scents are the most frequently purchased things. And you can see seasonality in purchase data, right? There's more purchases of these sprays when holidays are coming up. They can observe customer behavior, right? When are people using these sprays, right? They're using them in specific situations, like I'm having guests or I just cleaned my house, which is an interesting time to be using something, right? You're starting to think, well, why would you use an odor eliminator after you've just cleaned, which in theory would be taking care of that. Or you're only using sprays with certain smells. And then they're telling you, well, I want something long lasting. I don't want to just mask the smell. I want it to actually be there all the time, but I don't want it to smell like I just drowned my house in, scented candles and I must be covering something up. I want it to just feel natural. So what does that all kind of ladder up to is the insight that scent is actually a reward for cleaning, right? You know you've done a great job when it smells clean. And your home is only clean when it smells clean. If you think about when guests walk in, that's one of the first things that they experience about your home is that sensory moment, right? Think about when you come home from vacation after 2 weeks and you walk in your house, right? That's the scent is the first thing that guests engage with. And so there's a really interesting deep insight about the role of scent in conveying a clean home and feeling that your home is clean. So
Thanks, Juliana. I think those are
yeah.
such incredible examples. And I think that, it is really important for us to think about some of the deeper aspects of insights. But let's see what our audience here has to say about the characteristics of customer insights. So we have a little test for the team on the line here. You'll see a poll come up. Please select the option that answers which of the following are characteristics of a customer insight. I'll give you guys a few seconds to do this. And we're seeing some of this stuff move, which is very interesting. Great. So I think we have a pretty good quorum here. Nice distribution, but the overwhelming response is E, which is actually the correct answer. It is all of the above, A, B, C, D. And so most of you got this correct, which is fantastic. A, B, and C are also technically correct, but they're only part of the definition. So good job, everyone. And we have a few more of these polls, so stay tuned for our content moving forward. You have 2 more opportunities to get things right. So having talked about the why behind the insights and what we mean by insights and the characteristics, we wanted to talk a little bit about the application of insights and why this is really important in the work that we do. So for those of you who have been through the marketing model training for Pfizer C, the Science Empathy Experience, and our approach to marketing at Pfizer is really focused on answering the questions of where to play, what to own, where to win, and how to win. You can see that insights really inform every strategic choice that is made at critical activities, really across our model and across the process. They play a really important role starting from the customer journey that we map in the where to play to really understand what the think, feel, do is and what our customers are really deeply thinking about. They play an important role in positioning and in the what to own, particularly around positioning development that then helps translate into messaging and creative and the outward expression of our brand. They play a critical role in the where to win. So once we've identified those strategic areas of opportunity, how do we operationalize that? And how is that aligned to our understanding of customers? And ultimately, how does our understanding of customers inform the omni-channel mix and the decisions that enable us to deliver those engaging and lasting connections with our customers? So it really plays a role across the process with specific emphasis in some of these areas. And when you look at just pulling through the Febreze example that Juliana talked about, where facts, observations, and the stated need led to the insight of the home is only clean when it smells clean, you can actually see that insight informed their positioning, and the way they positioned themselves was really Febreze making the filthiest places smell nice, no matter what they look like, and an air freshener that will give you that final touch up after the cleanup. So it went beyond just odor elimination to really claiming that space around the smell and making that clean smell come to life in a very experiential way. This informed their creative, and I have a video to share with the team here in terms of how that was activated from a consumer perspective, but also how that then came to life in other activations of their strategy, which really made Febreze synonymous with cleaning through the addition of scent. So it went beyond elimination of odor, and they had a series of activations like testimonials and sponsorship of torture test situations that really brought this concept to life. So one example of that is the creative here. Some of you may have seen this. For those of you who haven't, I think it's a terrific video to bring to life the positioning and the approach that they used. I'm hoping this video works for everyone. In the situation that it doesn't, Caro, could you please help post a link? For those, don't watch it right now, watch it after if you're not able to hear it. But this just sort of brings to life the Febreze value proposition in an experiential way. So hopefully that gave you a flavor of how Febreze brought this to life, but this concept of people being blindfolded and expecting this amazing, beautiful environment, that they were smelling this amazing scent, and then only to realize that they were in a very shabby and somewhat sketchy room that was extremely filthy and dirty, but really brought that connection with the scent to life in a very meaningful, experiential way. So this is where we really feel the power of customer insights can bring the brand to life, bring loyalty, bring that connection. And I'm sure most of you will not forget this video. I certainly did not after I watched it. And it is something that creates that lasting, memorable connection. So our second knowledge check, again, is connected to where insights play a role. We'll give you guys a few seconds for this, for the poll that comes up. Thank you. We're seeing the responses coming in, which is wonderful. There's a lot of consistency. Great. So I think we have a critical mass. Again, I'm getting the thumbs up from Caro. So the correct answer is B. Congratulations to everyone who got that. For those who said A, it is very critical in the customer journey as well, but it is really critical really across the board, particularly in some of these key areas. So thank you everyone for your poll. We are moving into the third segment, which is also a really exciting way to bring customer insights to life. So what do we actually do? We've talked about the why, we've talked about the what, we've talked about the where they play a role. Let's talk a little bit about the how we bring this to life in our own Pfizer way, in our own approach. So we are introducing a rigorous approach to customer insight generation, and it's really these 5 steps because we love our 5-step processes for everything. We always start with market research. We always start with Juliana because she's very important. And we start with mining for those insights. From that, we overlay those insights with our partners, our market research partners, into the customer journey framework. We then dive deeper into the 5 whys. We, from those areas, generate insight statements, and then we test and validate those statements using a nifty checklist that we have for you. So we'll take you through over the next segment each of these steps and what these steps entail, and some examples that really bring this to life. So starting with our first step, what is really critical, since we play this very cross-functional partnership role, I'm gonna ask Juliana to take the lead on sharing with us our approach to generating customer insights, starting with that deep understanding and what it really takes to think about the data in a way that can really help us use those pieces of data as a starting point for insight development.
Thank you. So basically, what you need to do is start with a lot of different data sources. People talk a lot about you've got your prescription data, you've got social listening data, you've got what you're seeing in the market, everything else. But really, what a lot of this comes down to is pulling all that together and finding observations and insights from qualitative research and quantitative research. And I saw a couple of questions come into the chat, so I'm going to try to address them at the same time. So qualitative research is what I think about is that's where you explore why, right? Or that's where you explore if you don't really understand something. If you saw an interesting trend in the data, but you don't know what's behind it. For example, with Eliquis, they were looking at big data. Like the equivalent of an IBM Watson, right? They were looking at that to figure out how much deep vein blood thrombosis was being undertreated. And you can find from that data, here's the treatment rate, here it's doctors at urgent care clinics, it's, this kind of specialty in this kind of, part of the US. And people are like, great, that's where it's happening, but you don't know why it's happening, right? Why would doctors not treat this? Is it because they don't recognize it? Is it because they don't believe in treating it? Is it because they think they're treating it? We would just say use Eliquis, and they're like, no, grapefruit juice is awesome. So in their minds, they don't have a problem. Or is it that they actually prescribed something and gave it to the customer didn't fill it? Or they made a referral to another doctor and the customer didn't do it. You don't really know. So that's where you can find some of those people, get them into qual, and start trying to find those deep insights from them. Then quant is a way to count. Right. So if you are seeing some things and you have some hypotheses, but you want to know, is this just one random outlier or is this actually a thing? And how often is it happening? Quant is what allows you to do that. Plus, it's also how you can segment your customers into those MECE groups that you can decide who do you target and who don't, and what would be the messages that would be most appealing to each of those groups. And qual and quant work together, right? You can do qual to figure out what you should be asking about in quant. You can do qual to figure out what you heard in quant. So there's a lot of great ways that you can use it. Specifically with qual, to get to those unarticulated things, I'm really a fan of sort of psychographic approaches, ethnographies, things that get people thinking differently. And it sounds crazy, but they actually work. I'm going to go even older than Chantix and Viagra. I'm going to take us back to 2004 when we had Caduet, which is a combination of Norvasc and Lipitor, which is blood pressure and high cholesterol. And doctors were not prescribing it. And they would tell you, oh, it's because the access is terrible or the sampling is terrible. The titration is difficult. People don't understand it. It's hard to explain to patients. Reason. We fixed all the reasons. None of it mattered. So finally, one day we just asked them in research, well, if Norvasc was an animal, what would it be? And we got, it's high blood pressure, it's golden retriever. It's sort of your man's best friend. It will get the job done. It will always be there for you. And we said, well, what about Lipitor? They said, it's a lion. It's the king of the jungle. It's powerful. It comes in, it does the job. And then we said, well, what is Caduet? And they couldn't actually answer. And then people said, platypus. In multiple individual interviews, platypus. And we're like, why platypus? Right? Well, if you think about a platypus, right, it's a duck and a beaver, which makes no sense, like why you would put together a duck and a beaver in the first place. Plus, I could tell you a lot of things about ducks. You could probably tell me things about ducks. I could tell you things about beavers, right? Ducks swim and they fly and they have a beak and they quack and they lay eggs. And beavers, they build dams and they have the flat tail and they have gnawing teeth and all. But can anyone tell me anything about a platypus? I think I just recently learned that platypuses platypi are poisonous. I had no idea. So just because I know what a duck is and a beaver is, does not mean I know anything about a platypus. But our sales reps were treating Caduet like, oh, you know this stuff. We don't need to explain it to you because you already know, because you know ducks and beavers. So you're good. And doctors were like, what the heck is this thing? I don't know what you're talking about. which means you have to go back and you have to start over with how you engage, right? So that's an example of doctors who are rational and it's hard to get insights out of. But if you ask them things in a unique way, you can get things out of them. You can ask them about archetypes, right? With Viagra versus Cialis, right? They'll tell you like that Cialis, that Viagra is like a New York firefighter that always shows up. You can rely on it. And Cialis is like a superhero, which is like, or wizard. Like, okay, I hope you'll show up. I don't exactly know how you work. And so that makes me a little uncomfortable relying on you, right? Would they ever be able to tell you that one is like Spider-Man and one is a fire? No. So you have to get to them through things like, projective exercises, things like that, ethnographies of how people live their daily lives and asking them to upload photos of those moments in their lives, photos of their home, videos of themselves, things that remind them of things. All of those will help you get to those places. And I don't know, as you can tell, I could nerd out on this stuff forever. So
Love it,
anyway.
Juliana. I think it's so critical that you mentioned the projectives, because having worked on Xeljanz, even in specialty care with HCPs, rheumatologists, gastroenterologists, right, very different. We found very similar things and much deeper value in doing emotional drivers research and really unlocking the why people were doing certain things, and they were not the obvious reasons, and so there really is a lot that can be gleaned from some of these techniques, and really getting to these. But like, I always love talking about the partnership that we have together. So and you've told me many times, and I believe this, that we have to triangulate to get to these insights. So any other thoughts that you have, just in terms of how we approach research and insight development before we get to the insight work?
I would just say, that partnership with a market researchers lead is really important. And what you should be doing together is really getting to what is the question that's keeping you up at night? What is that you want to understand, right? And then figuring out, do I really feel like this is going to push through the stated things that, all those CADWIT barriers I told you, is it going to push through those and actually get to something that you maybe haven't heard before? Someone in the chat also asked about finding an insight that's unique and ownable. And I think that sometimes you can come across differentiated from the competition. Sometimes you can come across something that is true, but it would be better addressed by a competitor than you, meaning they're going to do a better job at that than you are because of their personality or something else, right? If you think about Cialis and Viagra, they're very differentiated in terms of personality. So while they're both about connection, because they're both about getting couples back together, Cialis can do connection a lot better with their whole positioning than we can. So we can try to be in that space, but it's just going to be a losing battle. So not every insight is something that you can uniquely own. So it's really great when you can pair an insight with something that you can do, some access you have to the customer, some way of understanding, or something in your brand personality that says, that's the thing that I can really bring to life in a different way than someone else. Sometimes that just means being the one to bring it to life first. So anyway, I would say that partnership with market research, really looking all around you at other sources. There's never going to be one source that's going to be the answer. People say like, well, social listening or AI or this or that. It's never going to be one thing. It's always going to be a combination of things. And you have to remember to step back and look at it bigger picture and think about what are some of those other things that it draws connections to that you may already understand more deeply. For example, the path to quitting smoking, the path to getting on Viagra, and the path to dieting, and the path to alcoholism recovery are all very similar, right? They're all things where you're like, well, I'm committed, but I just had a lapse, but I'll get back to it. Or, well, if I'm going to quit smoking or go on Viagra, I have to change my whole lifestyle. I have to change how I see myself and change everything about my behavior. And I don't know if I want to do that. That's really hard to do, right? So look for those universalities that you may already understand more intuitively and see if some of those can apply to what you might be hearing in research. So anyway, the point is,
That's great.
Gather as much as you can, step back, triangulate, but make sure that you're approaching things in a way that can get you to deeper answers. And if you're struggling to figure that out in terms of what are the best ways, talk to your market research people, talk to market research excellence, talk to the PALs, talk to Sonali and the excellence team. There are lots of people who can come in and help with that.
Perfect. Yeah. And I think the other way too, Juliana, that we talk about is not just how do we get these insights, how do we organize them, right? Because there's so many different insights and they occur really across the journey. So one approach that we have within our toolbox is our customer journey framework, which really helps us articulate what is it that our customers are thinking, feeling, and doing at various stages of that journey. And this is very much a partnership with our market research colleagues, even our cross-functional colleagues, quite frankly, our medical colleagues, sometimes our GAV colleagues, to really help map out what are those critical areas in which our customers are experiencing certain bottlenecks, certain friction points. We want to look at this from the view of our customer, our primary customer segment. We want to focus on what is it that they're really thinking, feeling, and doing at each stage. So what are the thoughts? What are the feelings? What are the actions? And this is, keep in mind, not something we want people to think, feel, and do. It is what they're naturally thinking, feeling, and doing. And articulating that from the first person, in their voice is really critical. Once we've done that mapping, what that then enables us to do is look at the disconnects between what people are thinking and feeling versus what they're doing. And that can actually be a really rich area for us to unlock some of these insight territories, which enables us to then go a little bit deeper. So in the case of Febreze here, like the challenge here was, the person or the mom here was thinking that I really don't have time. I don't know when I'm going to find time to clean more often. But then what they were actually doing was spending all the extra time that they had cleaning, so staying up at night and cleaning. So you see this kind of schism between what people like prioritize and what they're actually doing in their behavior. And that really becomes a nice place to then investigate, like, well, why are they doing that? Why do they clean more often? Because they want their home to look and smell nice. Why is that important? It gives them a sense of satisfaction that their home is clean. Why that is then important is that they can be ready to handle any spontaneous impromptu moments when people drop in. Why is that important? Because it reflects on them as a person, and then ultimately it makes them feel like they're a good parent who's on top of things. So you can see how it goes from like a very functional place of like, I need things to smell nice, to like, I want to feel like a good parent and I want to feel like I'm on top of things. And so that's really the level at which we want to get to when we start drilling down for insights. So once we have those insight areas, we also recommend putting together an insight statement, which captures this underlying why. And it contains three key components. It's the context, which is simple factual observations of why the customer is behaving in a certain way in a given situation. Oh, that's hilarious. Cleanliness is next to godliness. I agree. So the example here for Febreze is, I love how my home smells after cleaning. It makes me feel virtuous. Like the godliness example, I think you preempted that, Jennifer. And it makes me feel good about myself. You look at the frustration, which is that barrier or tension that the customer experiences. It's really that we need to fix this situation. So here, what we see in Febreze is it's really that tension, right? I find that the just clean scent only lasts for so long, and I don't really have the time and energy to clean more to maintain that scent. The future desire is what that hope is for the future, that ideal desired outcome. In this case, is I wish there was a way to extend that freshly clean smell in between cleanings. And so when you look at these three components and you summarize them in a precise way for the customer insight core idea, you articulate it as home is clean only when it smells clean. So this kind of ties to that original insight that Juliana talked about, where they looked at all these different data points. They were able to construct it in these ways and then really get to a core customer insight idea. So you may come up with several of these. We can certainly apply this to our own category. We have a alopecia areata example here. where, our HCPs are looking at starting all their patients on steroids because they're inexpensive, so it's very factual, observational, right? But the frustration there is really like they know that they should move their patients on a long-term treatment, but they don't want to really push them because they want their patients to like them. Now, this is not something that they would openly admit. So this is why it's something that we really want to get deeper down on with frustration. And then the future desire, obviously, is a way they wish they could get their patients to be on the same page. Now, notice that they're not saying, I wish I had a product. I wish I had a treatment. So this is really not about the solution is not really about your product. The solution is really about an approach that they would like to take because they're not naturally thinking of your product when they're thinking about a desired outcome. So that's really important to keep in mind. And that then gets us to this customer insight idea of, follow my lead, you'll thank me later. So that's how we can start thinking about insights and how we construct insights and the various components of insights. But then how do we know if we're doing a good job with these insights? So we actually introduced what we like calling the DREAM criteria because we love our acronyms and we love fun acronyms like DREAM. So it starts with data driven. So as Juliana said, it's informed by multiple sources of data that we're triangulating. It's revealing. So there's this deeper breakthrough revelation. It is emotional. So you know that it's getting deep down and it is uncovering that underlying tension or frustration. It's actionable. So it's not just, something out there that we have no way to address or that our competitor can address better. And then ultimately, it explains the motive or the why behind a particular behavior or attitude. So when we apply this to Febreze, for example, we can see that the context includes those data-driven elements. It's informed by multiple sources of data. It is revealing to some degree. There is this recognition about the outcome or the customer desire. The frustration is emotional here, where it talks about, like, I don't have the energy to clean. The motive, it talks a little bit about the why there. It is actionable to the brand in that it'll unlock growth. Um, and then we get to some of these key areas of the criteria here. Common pitfalls, we always like to highlight a few of these. I won't go over all of them. As Kara said, we have like a detailed module here, so you can really dive into some of these. But some of the key things here, some best practice, write them from the first person, so you're really articulating that voice of the customer. Try to avoid mentioning your product or brand because that's not how our customers naturally think. Try to go beyond just the functional benefits to some of those deeper emotional benefits. Try to stay away from explicitly mentioning facts. Make sure that it is not written like a product strategy, and it is not just a category truism that everybody would know about, and it is something that is actionable. So these are some of the things that you really want to think about with a criteria to really assess your insights and make sure that they're insight worthy. And just, as an example here, what's wrong with the statement, right? So looking at a Parkinson example here with the context, you can see that you have 67%. So it's including an explicit fact data point. You can notice here that it's not written from the customer's point of view in the first person. So you don't know if it's really truly reflecting the customer voice. There is a widely understood fact here within the frustration, so it's not quite deep enough. You have the mention of a specific product, once a day medication. It's focused on functional features and benefits. And ultimately, it's written a bit like a product strategy. So you want to be able to avoid that. So hopefully this demonstrates like some of the areas you want to avoid going into as you're writing these insights so that you are representing the view and voice of the customer. So with that, we wrap up this section. I know we went at rapid speed and there is a lot more, there's more examples, there's more to dive into when you do the self-led, if that is something that you choose to do. But hopefully this gives you a good understanding of our approach to insights. The more you do this, the more proficient you'll get at it. But want to wrap this up with like a quick and final knowledge check here with regards to, this is a bit of a trick question. All of the following are ways of determining an insight statement truly reflects a customer insight, except, please answer. what you believe is the right answer. I'll give people a few seconds to do that. So I'm seeing the numbers slow down a little bit. And the good news is most of you got this one correct. The correct answer is F, which is it focuses on the functional features and benefits of your product. So this was a bit of a trick question because it was the inverse of how you would write an insight. But congratulations to everyone who got this correct. And with that, we wrap this particular module. Just a quick summary of just a quick recap on our approach to customer insights. It's this 5-step process. Feel free to reach out to Juliana and I and any of our team here for more support or more. We're happy to answer any questions that you have even after the session. You know, there's a lot to take away, but a few things. Our definition of insights. Pay attention to think, feel, do. Think about the insight statement construction of context, frustration, and future state. The DREAM criteria, which we love. We love our acronyms. We hope you'll remember that one. And please remember that this is a very collaborative effort. Hopefully, Juliana and I have demonstrated that through our session here. We love working together, and I'm sure you guys love working with her team as well. And then ultimately, make sure that you have a good sense of your segmentation before you embark on any insight work. And with that, I will hand over to Caro to take us home.
Thank you so much. It was incredible. Thank you for the greatest examples, for answering the questions. But before we begin the Q&A session, please, we kindly ask you to complete the training feedback survey that you have right now and on the screen. Again, please use the arrows to navigate through questions 1 through 4. And let's, we have 3 minutes for questions. Again, we have responded some questions, but I have a question from Vanessa here, which says, and this is for you, Juliana. What is Pfizer's gold standard to capture those gathered insights and make them shareable? Not every market can do lots of market research, so we would be eager to explore on what others did.
Well, thank you so much for that great question, because it's essentially the role of my new job, which is the Market Research Excellence Team. The whole point of that is to find some consistency in how we collect insights. And then once we have that consistency, what we can do is learn from across all those teams. So for example, we now have consistency in how we test our DTC. I know that's not ex-US, but just philosophically, right? So now we've tested 300 plus ads the same way, and we've learned a lot about what works for Pfizer in ads in terms of how to use emotion and how to tell a story and even how to brand it effectively. And all of that we're aggregating into a learning series that will go back out to marketing, so that teams can learn lessons from other teams, because so many times something amazing is happening on one team and another team never knows about it, or some mistake happened on one team and we would love to share that mistake with everyone else so that no one else makes the same mistake, right? So the goal of my team is to help aggregate all of those findings and put them back out to marketing and to the market research community so we can learn.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I don't think I see another question.
No, I just wanted to add to that, actually, Caro. Maybe also one of the things as part of the academy, we have communities of practice, and there is going to be best practice sharing that really enables. We understand the value of peer-to-peer sharing as well, and that is another added venue. And as you know, insights play a role really across the process. So you're going to see a lot of insight examples in content come through in multiple modules as we release them.
Awesome.
And I did see a question about money really quickly, budget. There are a lot of ways to gather insights that are not as expensive, but also if you work with your market research partner or you come to us, we can help you with even leveraging insights from other therapeutic areas that might be similar. So tell us what's keeping you up at night. We will do our best to find a way to answer that question within the constraints that you have.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you so much. So let's wrap up. We're just on time. So again, thank you, Sonali. Thank you, Juliana. It was excellent. Every time I learn more and more about customer insights. To all the attendees, thank you for taking the time to experience this module. So again, please keep an eye out for further communications from the Marketing Excellence and Academy team. We'll be sharing more resources and updates to support your ongoing learning and development. And please, you can also access the Academy Hub. I shared the link. You will find a lot of additional trainings, other trainings, and you can have the self-paced training on customer insights. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful rest of your day, evening, afternoon, and see you next time. Thank you very much again, Sonali, Juliana, and thank you for all the attendees.